in my final year, I studied at NUST, at Namibia University of Science and Technology. In my final year, we had a professor visiting from Stanford, and she did a data science bootcamp for us, like for a week. And I was like, what is this? Like, I didn't know this was a thing, So, hey, what have I been doing the past 2.5 years? Like, I could have been in the data science stream, but it wasn't like a subject at that point at NUST even. So that's the point where I really decided, okay, I can leverage the skills that I learned as a software developer because they're super transferable to do data science.
So data analytics is one of the hottest job trends around. This is mostly because companies are swimming in raw data and they're looking to turn that into actionable insights to make decisions like launching new product lines. To unlock these secrets now hidden within the data, we need data analysts. So, Stephanie, what exactly does data analytics entail and what does the day in the life of a data analyst look like?
Thank you for the question. I think the background you gave is pretty much a really good summarization of what data analytics entails. It's literally just taking what raw information is available within your business and turning it into actionable insights. Because ultimately, what you're trying to, the end goal you're trying to reach is you want to make a decision. You want to take action in some way, shape, or form. So data analytics is the process of taking raw information through that lots of processes to a point where you can actually make a decision very clearly, very quickly. Sorry, there's a bit of lag on my side. I'm not sure if I see you. But yeah, as far as the data analyst role, every business kind of has a different definition of what that role is. So by my own understanding and my own experience, the way I see the data analyst role is that that's the person that engages with your business stakeholders the most, gathers the requirements, is what we call them, is basically the needs of the business that for whatever purpose the data product you're going to develop is going to be used. So if it's going to be used to make decisions around how to allocate budget, you need to understand what are the requirements of the business users that are actually making those kinds of decisions. So data analyst has those discussions, gathers those requirements, develops a data analytics product, whether it's an Excel file, whether it's a Power BI dashboard or some other tool, even PowerPoint, to basically bring the insights that'll help the business stakeholders make those decisions that they want to make. That's like a very simplified version. The way that trends are going, it looks like people are more interested right now in data engineers, and I'll have to just break down, like kind of distinguish between a data analyst, data engineer, and a data scientist to give you some context. So data analyst, like I mentioned, talks to those stakeholders, gets those high-level insights, helps people make decisions. Data engineer takes that data, raw as it is, and takes it through several processes to get it in a state that the business can actually use it to understand their own business, to make those decisions. And then a data scientist would come in and even create a hypothesis. So what if we could make sales increase by 10x within whatever period of time? Then they would go about identifying the data they need to make that happen, and then several other processes to basically get it to a point where you will realize that goal, right? So I hope that's a little bit clearer so you can understand kind of the the difference between a data analyst, data engineer, and data scientist. And again, it's just my own opinion of what these roles are. Every business has their own definition.
Okay. So given that there are these different routes to take, each one, of course, requires its own specific skill sets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say are the key skills and qualifications that you would need as a data analyst first, and then perhaps as the other roles?
Yeah. Okay. So for a data analyst, I think a key skill you need to have, I will go from the technical skill, is SQL, because SQL for those of you who don't know, it's a sequential query language. It's the language that is used to manipulate data and kind of just model it and be able to take it and kind of spin it around and look at it from different perspectives. So as a data analyst, you must master this skill because it's the main tool that you're going to use to investigate data, right? Aside from that, I think a good understanding of your basic statistics, because essentially the analysis of data is just describing what it is, what it's been, what it's going to be. And using statistics, you can actually be able to tell that story, what happened, why did it happen, what will happen, and what you should do about it, right? So that's for data analyst technical skills. But I think the soft skills are the most important for any of these roles. And the first of which is effective communication. And I mean this from listening, number one, and then to writing, to speaking, to writing. Listening is a really important one because, as I mentioned, a data analyst, the job starts when you start, you know, trying to understand the problem. And how will you do that? You need to communicate. You need to know which questions to ask. You need to gain context of the people that you're working with, the environment within which they're working, the challenges that they face, right? So oral listening is a very like super important skill. And then speaking, being able to articulate complex concepts in a super simple way, depending on who your audience is, because you're likely going to be, as a data analyst, you're likely going to be between two types of stakeholders. So super businessy, just wants to focus on strategy, the operations as far as the actual process that's going on. And then you're going to be talking to maybe a technical resource like a data engineer that can help you to achieve the goal that the business has. And there you need to speak in really specific technical terms that they will understand, that'll make their job easier. So being able to communicate effectively given the stakeholder that you're speaking to, so being able to adjust. And then written form, you need to be able to write down what you've built, make it make sense, make it flow logically, and keep that golden thread through and through. So it's that golden thread is what happened, why did it happen, what now, like what will happen, and then what now, what should we do about it, you know? So being able to articulate that story, because essentially that's what you're doing, is storytelling throughout every deliverable that you give and every way that you communicate with your stakeholders. That's really important. And I think some other soft skills would be time and workload management. So you'll find that in the industry, you can operate as a data analyst in one of many ways. One could be you own your projects and you run that end to end. Another could be you're part of a bigger team and you own a part of the process and you run with that. So you really need to be able to understand, okay, what is expected of me? How much time will it take to get this done? What resources do I need? And be able to communicate that with whoever you're working with. It could be the person that's waiting for the data product that you're creating. It could be the person that's managing you that needs to know what you're working on, whether you're struggling, whether, you know, this is too easy for you, because that can happen too. So being able to understand how to manage your time and your workload and communicate that to people as well. I think those are super important skills. Everything else you can learn. Obviously, programming is a skill that you must have. Python, I would say, is the best language to start with, just because there's so much support for it. It's open source. You're not going to pay anything to learn Python. You can practice it immediately. A lot of tools to kind of optimize the processes that a data analyst has to do are being developed in Python, so you can leverage from other people's work if you know how to use that tool. So yeah, that's at a high level. Now, to distinguish between the three roles that I mentioned, so data analyst, data engineer, data scientist, all of them will have to have all of those skills. It's just to what degree will you have your heavier focus. So your data analyst might have a heavier focus on, you know, stakeholder engagement, requirements gathering, so that documentation portion as well, and SQL heavy. But your data engineer is closer to a software engineer role, where you need to actually build the infrastructure through which data is going to move from where it's created to where it's being used. So while you do need to know SQL, you do need to know Python. You might also need to have more of an understanding of cloud infrastructure, how to set that up, what kind of licensing is available, what kind of options are available for you based on the use cases that you need. So some reports will be needed on a daily basis. Some reports will be needed weekly or monthly or yearly. So you need to make the decisions as to, okay, we need to pay for this type of storage to serve this type of report. So you have to think about those kinds of things more than if you were a data analyst. And then the data scientist, you need to be way heavier on the applied statistics and mathematical modeling, because there you're coming up with hypotheses, you're designing experiments, and you have to take it end to end, right? So yes, you need to know SQL to manipulate data, but you need to have that fundamental understanding of how to design hypotheses, how to test the efficiency of the models that you're developing, how to compare the different models, and how to decide what's best for the purpose that you're actually working towards. So yeah, those are the three distinctions. While everybody needs to have that fundamental statistics, programming, working with technology and cloud, each different role has a heavier focus on one or another
Okay.
component.
So at a foundational level, like if someone is trying to get into this career path,
Hmm.
from what we know, you can either go the computer science route or the statistics route. Which one did you take?
Yeah. So I took the computer science route because I didn't realize I was going into analytics. I thought I was becoming a software developer. um, Throughout high school, I just did, computer studies and
Gotcha.
accounting by my mother's dictation. She was like, no, I wanted to go for arts. And she was like, nah, you're not going to make money with arts. You're going to do accounting and computers because money and technology are the only things that are guaranteed going forward. And I was like, well, I mean, that's a very wise outlook. And it prepared me for, going into a computer science degree, although I would have wanted to spend more time on arts. But basically, my route was computer science. I knew I wanted to do software development right from the beginning, because the concept of software development to me was you take nothing basically and you create something from scratch. So my creative side that I wanted to put in terms of arts classes, I got to use it in software development, because I would plan out, okay, who's going to be using whatever I'm going to be developing it, what will they be using it for, how do they want to use it, what considerations do we need to keep in mind, like security, downtime, and all of that stuff. And for me, software development was the place where I could play around the most, and build really complex things or really simple things. And then in my final year, I studied at NUST, at Namibia University of Science and Technology. In my final year, we had a professor visiting from Stanford, and she did a data science boot camp for us, like for a week. And I was like, what is this? Like, I didn't know this was a thing. So, hey, what have I been doing the past 2.5 years? Like, I could have been in the data science stream, but it wasn't like a subject at that point at NUST even. So, that's the point where I really decided, okay, I can leverage the skills that I learned as a software developer because they're super transferable to do data science. And that's how I got
Mhm.
into the data science stream. So every role that I've had since graduating has been either data analytics or something that informs data analytics, rarely ever a software development
Okay.
role.
So
Yeah.
at the time, okay, you did the course and then you graduated. So how did you get into data analytics? Like, did you take on an internship or did you take a DIY approach by working with open source data sets?
Yeah. So for
Question
me,
mark?
getting involved, no, it's cool. Getting involved in data analytics came as kind of a consequence of being involved in everything. So my first year, I don't know, I was probably like super distracted or something, and I didn't perform as well as I usually do in my academics. And I was like, that's not me. So please, come on, like I have to do something to get back on track. And just at that time, I don't know if you've heard of or met Professor Nisha Peters. She became the dean of the faculty of computing and informatics. So she came in like a bomb. And she started a whole bunch of initiatives, and she was like looking for volunteers. And I was like, sure, okay, I'll do some stuff. That involved, training the community and raising the awareness of STEM subjects to women and to just the general public as well. And so I got really involved in facilitating workshops and sharing the little that I knew from 1 or 2 years in university. So I got really used to that habit, and that led me to Fab Lab, which is it's basically a place where you can create things from scratch, not just digitally like with software, but like in the physical realm. So I got to take my concepts from digital to building a physical thing with like wood and 3D printers and doing the mechanical engineering bit of it as well. So my involvement over that, let's say, year and a half exposed me or raised the awareness about me to the people who were creating opportunities in analytics and so forth. So I got an internship in my final year to go work with a private bank in Switzerland through a program called B360. So B360 is a program that takes students in their second or final years from Namibia, South Africa, and Zambia, and secures them internships in Switzerland with different types of companies, depending on what course you're studying. So I got that opportunity to go work with a bank, and I did something around creating digital learning content because I was teaching so much and facilitating so much in the volunteering that I was doing, but it also aligned with my technical skills. So that was the first opportunity that I got, and it opened the door to many other opportunities. From there, I had an opportunity to do data analytics work in France with a combination of my other creative skills, so the Fab Labby stuff that I do, the fact that I'm an artist, the fact that I was a radio presenter, I could bring all of those extra peripheral skills to the data analytics role in France. And I worked with a lot of really interesting brands and companies and worked on things like smart cities and worked on things like, luxury brands and how they can use data analytics. So it was really like, it blew my world wide open. Then I was like, okay, I need to focus now. I need to narrow it down. It's like it's going all over the place. So I came back home and I joined an audit firm, which is a PwC in Namibia. And shortly after that, I moved to Deloitte. But essentially, the time that I spent in these professional services firms was really to take the skills that I already had and support the processes that were already in place. So for those of you who don't know, professional services firms, they can vary, but typically an audit firm is filled with a whole bunch of accountants that deal with, reviewing companies' financial data, their business processes, their corporate governance, that sort of thing. And like the role that I was having was, let's say, if an accountant had to test stock that had volumes of like maybe 12,000 items, if an accountant has to physically go in there and count all of those things and recalculate how much money was supposed to come in versus what was recorded in the financials, it's going to be a lot of work. So what I was able to do is kind of streamline that, at least the calculation part. If they give me the data, I can apply the same rules that the business claims to have, applied to get the numbers that they got. And then we can compare, like, okay, you said you did this, we did it our side as well, and our results are different from yours. So can you give us an idea of why there are differences? And there are valid differences at times, in accounting you have things. But basically, yeah, that's a journey that I went on. Then from professional services, I got into banking. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is completely different from what I was doing supporting that side. Because now it's like product focus. Now it's like, okay, we have these products, commercial products that we're trying to sell to individuals, to businesses, to institutions. And we need to find a way for our bank to be their primary bank. So, you have your competition, you have your Standard Bank, your Net Bank, your FNB. So it was my job to help highlight the strengths of our product over the other products and kind of find ways to pull in more of the person's income to just land in this account instead of all of the others, right? So you would even give preferential rates so that people can be like, no, it's actually in my best interest to keep all my money together. That way, the bank now has more money to get more business. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a win-win situation, things like that. And I also helped on something like cross-border compliance reporting. So, you know, when you spend money outside of Namibia, there's that kind of a transaction is flagged and reviewed by, you know, central bank. And so all the banks in the country have to report those kinds of transactions that happen via their platform to the central bank. So what I did is I streamlined that process of gathering that data and identifying the types of transactions that the regulator is interested in, and then that solution was taken and rolled out throughout the rest of Africa, like because it was so streamlined. So I was like, whoa, I can have that much impact, you know? Like I was just trying to figure out a lazy way to get this done, because I don't want to do it every single time that it's due, you know, and or every time somebody has an idea to change it. So I was like, okay, wow, like there's actually more I can do with this skill. And so I got this opportunity to come to BDO, and that interview process was really cool for me. It was different from anything that I ever had. It was based on trust and just asking key questions that you anyway wouldn't be able to answer if you didn't really know your stuff. But I didn't even realize that, because I knew my stuff to that extent where it was just like it's common sense. And I think that's where we aligned. And now I'm getting my world of analytics has exploded, because like I mentioned beforehand, I was doing like a report here or some, you know, just some dashboard there. And now I'm taking that concept of data analytics and going right to the beginning, where the beginning we thought as analysts was, oh, you get the data from the database and then you do your things most. Yeah, no. The beginning is, how is that data created? What is the process through which it's created? Who is giving that data? Is it the customer? Is it your business? Like, you know what I mean? And how is that governed? How do you manage the data? When you get it, where do you put it? And how do you make sure you don't keep it for too long? Because there's regulations that say you can't keep this type of data longer than this period, or you can't process this type of data in that way to protect individuals, ethically speaking. So now I'm going into data governance and data management. I wasn't expecting that. I'm like an analyst. I thought I'm going further into like the data science realm. Like, I'm going to build experiments, and you know that's what I'm going to be doing. Now I'm like, okay, blow up. First of all, do you have a data governance structure, standard policy in your business? Do you even know what to do with your data? Do you have teams? Do you have people in place that can own the data? How will you make sure the data will be maintained and reliable once it gets into your reports? Can you make decisions off of that? And also, like, how do you design your whole organization to all be in sync, from the people, the processes to the technology, so that you can move towards your mission using data? So I'm more on that spectrum now. And then there's other elements of like operating models, like how should your business operate to minimize the friction between teams so that teams can collaborate, because you don't want silos. You don't want like the finance team working differently from the sales team in terms of how they're managing data and how they're reporting it, because that just makes it much more difficult for you to manage it. So yeah, my role at BDO has taken me and really broadened my horizon. And that's why I say I'm a data specialist or data architect, you know, because I take on any of these roles as needed. So our goal is to join the customer on their data journey, wherever they are in that journey. Most of the time, people think they are somewhere closer to AI, and they're very much not even started as far as data governance is concerned. Or they've got some data governance, but it's not consistent. It could be done better. And before they can get to AI, they need to fix this bit, right? So it's a lot of helping people realize where they really are in terms of that journey, and showing them that, hey, we can help you get there, like however you need it, right? So yeah, that's been my data journey.
Okay. Oh, pretty impressive and long, and also a bit more complex than one would think.
Yeah,
Because you
definitely.
just look at data analytics and you're just like, okay, it's just one thing, but there are several routes that you can go down and several areas that you can maybe like tap into to make yourself stand out. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very good insight. Um, all right. So, in your 6 years now as data architect, What challenges have you encountered, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Basically, I can categorize my challenges into a couple of buckets. I've had challenges with expectations not being what, or rather reality not meeting expectations. Challenges with narrowing focus or deciding what to focus on, because data analytics is such a multidisciplinary field, and then working with different types of leadership in an organization. So the expectations bit is like, typically an organization will put out a job vacancy, put a description in there. Yeah, we want a data analyst. We want the data analyst to do this and that and that. You apply, you go through the process, you get in. Cool. Now you get there and you realize that all the pre-work for you to be able to perform as a data analyst is not in place. So now you're required to kind of take a step back and actually do the data engineering role before you can be the data analyst. And so that requires a whole other set of skill sets, like I mentioned, or rather a heavier focus on another set of skills. And it can be super shocking. It can, because it's a lot. You really need to have a lot of practice in to be able to kind of tackle different types of issues. But as long as, like I mentioned, the communication is clear between you and the business, then the expectations can be managed. So it's not going to be like a matter of, yeah, we hired you to be a data analyst, but actually you need to be a data engineer and you need to be doing it perfectly right now. Like, you want to avoid that, because as long as both sides understand, oh, actually we thought we were ready, but we're not, and we need somebody to do this part. If you're willing, we will support your development to be able to get that done. So that's one of the ways you can tackle some of those kinds of challenges. Another challenge I mentioned was the focusing. So data science traditionally is known as the intersection between mathematics, computer science, and a domain, right? So that's the Venn diagram. And so each of those things in themselves is such a big world. Now, bringing those things together is an even bigger world. So really understanding what your interests truly are, like where they're more heavy in some areas and versus others. You really need to understand yourself, play around, experiment, see which parts of the process of the whole domain that you actually enjoy, and what kind of topics interest you. So for me, it's finance, because I've been doing finance since like grade 8. I've been doing accounting since grade 8. It comes intuitively to me. And so I focused heavily on the financial sector. I was like, okay, that's where I want to be. But even the financial sector can be blown up. You have insurance in the financial sector, you have banks, you have hedge funds, you have other kinds of investment funds. Now you need to see, okay, which ones of those am I more interested in, so that I can focus my energy. Okay, you say banks. Okay, what types of banks? Okay, you want to be on the commercial side, the retail, or you want to be on the investing side? Okay, you want to be on the investing side. Okay, what do you want to invest in? So it's like really asking yourself those questions to figure out what your true interest is, and building things along the way to understand which part of the process you gravitate to the most and that you want to actually develop on, so that when you're learning, because a lot of the time you're going to be learning self-paced, self-directed, you're going to decide what you got to be doing. And that in itself brings a lot of challenges, because you don't know. That's why you're learning. So now it's like, now you need to know before you know, and then it's just kind of weird. So
That's
for
true.
me, exactly. So for me, that's what I did, is like, okay, I keep pitching my career aspirations to different people. I pitch it to my wife all the time. She's like, "What do you mean? Or so what?" Like, she asks the kinds of questions that a technical person wouldn't ask, because she's not interested in the technical details. So is it ultimately making sense, like your plan? Is it going to actually get you to where you want to be, or are you too much in the details and too much focused on learning the latest skill? So really
Yeah.
understanding the why behind why you're doing your things, or why you're pursuing data analytics, will help you focus your energy and focus your skills development on a particular set of skills, instead of trying to take on everything all at once.
Yeah.
So that was the second type of challenge. The third one is the different leadership styles. So, I've been in teams where I've been the only woman in the team. I've been in teams where there are the same amount of women as there are men. I've been in teams where there are women, but only below management, below leadership, so it's like, yeah, it's cool you have women here, but like, not, women aren't still making the decisions, so it's still having an impact. And really understanding that just because I'm usually among men doesn't mean I have to behave like them or think like them or try and change myself to be like them. And really understanding that as a woman, I have a perspective that they don't. Uh, just because of the way that I am experiencing life as compared to how they're experiencing life, and understanding that both of those experiences are valuable. And so, not going through imposter syndrome to be like, no, I have to prove myself. What do you need to prove yourself for? You're literally in the room. That's proof in itself that you know what you're doing, right? So why, once you're in the room, are you still trying to prove? Like, what are you trying to prove, and who are you trying to prove it to? So it's, again, doing that introspection to understand, okay, what is important to me? What am I interested in? How do I want to work with others, and how do I want others to kind of treat me in that working space? So it really, as much as they guess there's an expectation on leadership to define that, there's so much that they can't define for you until you start asking yourself a lot of those questions, because that's going to guide the discussion. People who know what they want are more likely to be successful than those who are just kind of trying to figure it out, right? Even if you decide, okay, for the next 6 months, I'm focusing on this thing, whether I like it or not, within 3 months deep, like, I'm sticking through it for like 6 months so that I can properly understand what I like about it, what I don't like about it, what strengths and weaknesses or development areas I notice in myself, that either I can decide, do I need to focus on that, or it's okay if I kind of suck at that. It's it's all right. So really, yeah, the leadership styles have been varying, and I will say there's value in having both types. So women leaders, I feel, are typically more wholesome leaders, in that they think more of the whole person rather than you as that technical resource that must get stuff done. But that doesn't mean men don't think about that. It's just that it comes more naturally to women than it does to men. It's like that's something they need to train themselves on, but they need to do that anyway as a leader. The more senior you become as a leader, the more you have to think about people holistically. It's just that women seem to have that frame of thinking immediately rather than later on in senior leadership, right? And then the men are super mission focused. Like, they're like, okay, so how's this contributing to the thing we're trying to do? Does it really matter otherwise? No, no, it doesn't. Like, so it's really good to have that kind of clarity, because yes, a lot of times things are that simple. Women can tend to overthink things and overcomplicate, and so it's really nice to expose yourself to different types of leaders, and you don't have to wait until your direct line manager is, a woman or a female or a man. You can literally go out to throughout the business and identify people that you'd like to learn from, maybe because of the way you've seen them handle their relationships with their teams, maybe because of the way you've seen them handle relationships with clients, maybe because of the way you've seen them manage their projects. Like, maybe those are things that you want to learn from those people, and understand that everybody at every level has something to share and to learn. So yeah, that's one of the ways that you can tackle that
I
bit.
was saying, I love what you said about having a why attached to what this career path that you want to go down, instead
Yeah.
of just like flailing and being like, yeah, this is a cool thing and it's trending, right? I might
Yeah.
as well just try it out and go and do it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You'll
long
get lost in
term,
a
it will
rabbit
come and
hole
get
like that.
you because, yeah,
Yeah, and I
okay.
think I think the best advice I can give in terms of that specifically is, for anything that you're trying to learn, identify the must-have skills and just the bare, like, the fundamentals. Rather be really good at the basics than having a whole lot of skills, or really good at some really niche thing, because that's going to carry you further in the long term in your own individual journey and in your career. So rather focus on the fundamentals.
Okay. So, would you say that's something you would tell your younger self if you could travel back in time before you started and before you became more
Sure.
experienced? Would you tell your younger self that?
Definitely. Like, why? Like, somebody needs to ask me why. Like, somebody really needs to confront me and ask me, why do I want to do that thing? You know what I mean? I think because of the role that I've played in my life, in my family, and in my communities and things like that. I've been the eldest sister or the proactive person in the team assignment or whatever. Like I'm just like, yo, let's go get it. Let's just do stuff. Like I just want to be busy all the time because it's like that's how my brain is. I need to feel the progress. I need to see that I'm doing something. But if I was speaking to the younger version of me, I would say like just pause, slow down, hold on a second. Sure, you can do that. That's super exciting. Yes. Duh. But why? You know, really why? And why you? Why not somebody else? You know, like maybe something is important, but maybe it doesn't have to be you that does it. You know, maybe it's actually somebody else's responsibility. That's something to think about. In every instance, are you responsible to get the thing done? Or are you accountable for the thing being done, although you don't necessarily have to be the one doing it? Or do you just need to be informed that the thing is being done and that's where it's left? Or do you need to be consulted? Like, do you need to provide some input about how something needs to be done? Like, we really need to understand what is the expectation of you in the thing that you're trying to do. Yeah, I'll say that.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's get into the questions. So,
Yeah.
if anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the chat here. If you're on Vimeo, there's a chat on Vimeo. If you're on LinkedIn, there's also a chat there. So, please drop your questions and we'll get to them. I think we can start with Romario's question here in Vimeo. Okay, so how would you advise a network communication student who wants to get into data analysis, and where should I start with data analysis?
Yeah. So um, I think the very important bit is to go back to that Venn diagram of data analytics. It's your math, your programming, and your domain. So this question, the answer to this question is really dependent on what your domain of interest is. Like a network communication student, I would assume would work in a telecommunications company because that's where the skill is like super crucial. So if your interest is to be in the telecommunications domain, then I would say stick with obviously what you're doing in terms of your degree, and then just make sure you're also taking on your applied statistics and kind of your mathematics courses as extra courses if you can, just because they are, like I said, the foundation of data analytics. Like, yes, you can learn programming. Yes, you can learn these other stuff, but like what you're programming is based on statistics and mathematics, right? That's like how you're going to be messing with data. So that's where I would start as a student. Look around and see if you are able to take on some more courses that strengthen your quantitative rigor. That's how we call it. And that will kind of set you up to be better, have a better chance of being a data analyst, at least in the domain that you've chosen. In fact, any domain. And then I would say also look at resources like YouTube. Like you can learn programming or even your statistics from fundamentals to advanced in on YouTube. And the reason why I say these fundamentals are important is because this concept of machine learning and AI that we're looking at today is literally just statistics and mathematics operationalized, right, in the digital realm. Like it's the same fundamental concepts that are scaled to apply to a larger range of scenarios. And the moment you want to scale something, that's when complexities come in and challenges come in, and in order to be able to tackle those challenges you need those fundamental skills. So I'd say that's what you should do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all right. So we will be taking, let me say, six, seven, the seven questions that are here now.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're quite a bit. Okay, so we have one from Shemaine, and this one is as a data architect, what are some of the key areas one should have? Also, how does one approach starting out in this role?
Okay, so data architect is one that I didn't outline in those three roles that I mentioned. Data architect basically is one step before your analyst can even come in, your engineer can even come in. They help the business to define what their business looks like in terms of data, right? So it's like creating a replica of the business, the way it actually operates, the moving parts and stuff, and deciding how that data should be designed, the relationships between the entities. So if I give an example, if you are a shoe sales company, the kind of data that you'll have is a supplier for your shoes. You're going to have customers that want to buy your shoes. Then you're going to have kind of finance team that needs to report on the sales of those shoes, right? So you need to start thinking about what that looks like in terms of data and how that should be modeled. So your supplier or your shoes, a shoe should be coming from a supplier. So one supplier, one shoe, or multiple suppliers, one type of shoe. That's a relationship. And your customers can buy one or more shoes. So the relationship with the customer data object to the sale data object will be based on the order number, or whatever that we feed, and the items that are part of that. So little things like that you need to consider. How will the customer buy? Will they buy online? Will they buy in person? Will they buy immediately? Will they pay it off? These kinds of things need to be considered when you're designing how your data needs to look. And not only that, you need to understand who needs to interact with that data and what processes need to have access to that data and how they will ingest that data to make those decisions. So a data architect thinks about literally the architecture. When you're building a house, you don't just start building the house. Like, somebody has to speak to the homeowner, understand what they want, what their interests are style-wise, and kind of what their non-negotiables are. Needs to have 4 bedrooms, not 3, that kind of thing. And so the data architect does that planning work, that making sure that the different bits and pieces will work together once they are built. Otherwise, you go and find a mess that has to be cleaned afterwards, which is usually harder. So I think the key skills for a data architect would be data modeling. So SQL is important as well, but data modeling is, again, like what I described, defining real world objects in terms of data and deciding how those will be connected to each other. Yeah.
All right. So we have two questions about qualifications and certifications. I'm just going to combine them. So,
Okay.
is it better to get a master's in data science or analytics or something similar, or to just keep doing certifications? And is the Azure 101 certification good for particularly for Namibian students? And can it open up opportunities for us?
Hmm. So I would say, as a student, just off my experience, a master's degree holds more weight than a certificate, especially in technology. Um, in data science, because like I said, the focus, the more senior you become and the more data science your role, is very much on that quantitative rigor, your ability to design experiments and articulate what should be happening and why you made the choices that you made. And typically those skills are taught at master's level. Aside from it being a data science master's, just the fact that you have to decide what your research topic needs to be. You need to do research, you need to consult different references and things like that. Those kinds of skills are really required for those types of roles. And in the data science portion, in your bachelor's degree, you would master the fundamentals, but then in your master's degree, you would get advanced with it, which is, like I mentioned, where your machine learning comes in, where your artificial intelligence comes in. So for a data science type role, I would advise doing a master's over a certification. Although obviously certifications hold weight, it's really dependent on where you want to end up, like what kind of company you want to end up in. So, for example, a consulting company will heavily value certifications over a degree, because when they're going out to look for work, they're pitching themselves to their clients and saying, we have 30 people that have this certification, so you can trust that we know what we're doing, right? Specifically with that tool and that environment. So it is important to have it. You just need to decide, or rather discern, whether where you want to end up actually values that sort of thing, because it costs money more often than not. And you typically want a company to pay for that rather than yourself, because I mean, yes, you can pay for it, but if the ultimate benefit is for the company and not for you, really, then you want to make sure you allocate that accordingly. For me, I would say what I did was, I did my bachelor's degree. I had no intention of continuing after that because I didn't like the concept of just being in class and, like always studying. I prefer doing, like I love to build. Like I told you, I need to see that progress. So for me, a bachelor's degree was enough. And then I did a lot of certifications that gave me the peripheral skills around data science such that I could see the whole picture rather than just, okay, this is my data science experiment. That's what I want to do. And that's why you'll see that my career has been heavily in professional services or consulting, because that's where the value is of that many certifications and that seniority of certifications that I'm doing. I think for students, you should rather focus on getting deeper certifications than many certifications. So with Azure, you typically have your fundamentals level, your associate, and then you have your expert. I would say aim for associate level, because fundamentals, everybody can do it. It's very basic, you should know it actually. But your associate is what is going to kind of set you aside from the competition, which is another reason why you might want to pursue certifications. So yeah, it's dependent on you
Okay.
and where you see yourself.
All right. So while we're on this topic of certifications and qualifications, one
Mhm.
question, another question is, does starting with a 3 months boot camp, is it good enough for a beginner in data analytics with only a bit of Excel and SQL knowledge? Does that make
I would
sense?
say, first of all, do not underestimate your Excel and SQL knowledge, because data analytics, you're going to use that more often than you think. Boot camps, I will say they are useful for as long as you actually apply what you've learned while you're in that boot camp, and very long afterwards. Otherwise, you're wasting your money, because typically what they'll be teaching in boot camps is stuff that are already available freely online. The reason you would go to a boot camp is so that you have that community, so that you have that urgency, because like there's a deadline to meet. This thing is not going to be lasting forever. I'm accountable to some people. I have peers. I've committed, right? So that's the value of a boot camp, is to keep you honest, right? But now, if you're going to stop doing all of those things the moment you finish that boot camp, it's really not going to serve you. Maybe you will have developed a portfolio that can help you get a job, which that's good. It's an outcome that's expected. But right now, data analytics is such a competitive market that you're likely to not get a job within 6 months of completing that bootcamp. So what's your plan of making sure you maintain those skills and continue to learn after that fact, right? So I would say, yes, it can be valuable. Just make sure you're not wasting your money by following through. Yeah.
Okay. And the last one. Okay, people say that pursuing the math and statistics path is more advantageous than the computer science path when it comes to statistics and mathematical, mathematical modeling, as some concepts
Yeah.
are not covered in the computer science curriculum. Is there some sort of certification or short course one can take to fill in the gaps?
Sure. Not that I've seen. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. But my advice to be able to cover those kinds of things would be to identify the topics that are most prevalent when it comes to data science, as far as the kinds of challenges that you face. It's when you're having to pick the data, when you're having to optimize the models, when you're having to increase efficiency, basically those kinds of problems are tackled by certain types of topics in statistics and mathematics. So, with your statistics, you want to understand distributions, your probability theory. You want to understand linear algebra, because ultimately you're doing a whole bunch of calculations, and matrices are and vectors are the ways that those calculations are done on a computer. So if you understand fundamentally what a matrix is, what a vector is, what are matrix calculations, what kinds of transformations can be done to them to achieve whatever outcome you want, then once you're getting into the actual implementation of it, it's going to seem intuitive to you, because you know what's happening behind the scenes. You're not going to be the one writing the code to always combine or to build how a matrix will be calculating against a vector. But if you understand how it's done, you can use the tools that do it much more efficiently. Another couple of topics I would say to focus on is calculus. So calculus 1, 2, 3, your stochastic calculus. You want to focus on integrations and derivatives because those are the things that's basically the mathematics of change. And what you're trying to do with data analytics is understand if things will change. If so, how will they change? And if you know how they're going to change, what should you do about it, right? So the mathematics of change is fundamental to implementing models that will help advise what to do when things change. So I would say, yeah, you can look up, you can Google the top YouTube content creators for each of these topics. So like your statistics, your mathematics, you have your Khan Academy and stuff like that. Those resources are super valuable. Don't underestimate them just because they're free. If you are disciplined and follow through, going from the basics to the advanced topics, you will get that foundation, whether you're doing it in school or not. And you'll be able to prove that you have those skills by building things, because now obviously you don't have the degree that says you did those courses. So now you need to prove it in some other way. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the end of the Q&A session. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us, and to everyone else who tuned in. Yes, we had a couple of technical difficulties, but we made it through
Yeah,
all
we
of
did.
them. And
No,
yeah,
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I think every time I have a discussion like this, the content of the conversation is a little bit different, which shows just how quickly the landscape changes and how much you need to keep learning and developing yourself. But it's really nice to always be able to connect with people that are actually interested. We want to make sure that you can, even however you define yourself as, you can get into data analytics, and you're likely already doing it. You're just not maybe doing it in the terms that we would define, but everybody's doing data analytics. So jump on the bandwagon, don't get left behind, understand how to understand data and how to help other people understand it. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity.